It's really great to be here this afternoon and to be able to share with you a Scottish perspective on the day's topics, and to have the opportunity really to share with you the Scottish Government's efforts to introduce a human rights bill for Scotland. It is an urgent topic, which is something I'm particularly aware of following yourself, Olivier. I think that was a very helpful dive into the UK's welfare system and its inability to support people out of poverty and the difficulty that people have in navigating it. And I will come on to some reflections on his comments on universal credit, but I'll first explain a little bit more about why I'm here. Poverty, inequality and economic, social and cultural rights is a great topic for the Scottish Government's Minister for Equalities to discuss right now, as the Scottish Government is introducing a bill that will incorporate those very same rights. But as with many others in the Scottish Government at the moment, I am dealing with a few contradictions. We are seeking to incorporate, as far as possible within devolved competence, 4 UN human rights treaties. That is exciting. And it is a great opportunity to further the rights of citizens, whoever they are, across Scotland. But it is hard to celebrate with confidence. Recently, our attempt to incorporate the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child was taken to the Supreme Court, the resultant judgment highlighting the limitations of the scope of protections for human rights that the Scottish Government can introduce. It also highlighted the willingness of the current UK government to challenge us on any perceived overreach, even if it's simply about protecting children through incorporation of a treaty that the same government has ratified. We also can't ignore the UK government's increasingly cavalier approach to observing international law. This arguably makes it even more important that we, as the Scottish Government, take steps to protect our citizens and provide access to justice when rights are not being upheld. But it does knock the confidence in our ability to be a global leader, as we want to be, in the promotion, protection and ultimately realisation of human rights, as we contend with an ever more litigious UK government and complex constitutional landscape. But mitigating the impact on Scots of the UK government decisions that we disagree with is not new to the Scottish Government. To soften the blow of the worst impacts of austerity, we have invested in our game-changing Scottish Child Payment, which is a £25 per week per child benefit unique in the UK, which gives parents a much-needed boost during this cost of living crisis, and which we know already has had an impact, lifting an estimated 50,000 children out of poverty in Scotland. We've spent £733 million in the last 6 years to directly undo punitive UK government welfare policies, including the bedroom tax, and we're offering free school meals to all children in primaries 1 to 5. Now, all of that has been made necessary by decisions that we did not take, and we're very clear that we mitigate because it is the right thing to do, but we could be doing so much more with that money if those policies were undone at source. Now, you've heard some of the worst impacts of universal credit policies, and to me that's not just academic, it's personal, because I too grew up on benefits. I was homeless when claiming universal credit. A few £100s a month, which hardly covered transport and food, never mind trying to convince a landlord that I could keep up a lease or an employer that I was a good hire. And I'd not actually till today heard the term povertyism, but that is exactly what people are facing. It's what I faced. It was a very difficult situation to get out of, and there was certainly no easy route, particularly as a disabled woman, to lift myself out of poverty. And as you may have seen in my biography, I ended up working a full-time NHS job and then doing Deliveroo on the side to get by. So I was a very responsible teenager, but I was a teenager. And now, as a minister in the Scottish Government, I could not in good conscience allow other teenagers, children, to live that way or make decisions that I know could keep people in such a situation, like an under 25 penalty or a 2-child cap on benefits. But I am going to try to focus most of my contribution today on the positives, because Despite the deeply serious nature of what we are discussing today, it is also an exciting moment in our journey to become a fairer nation on the world stage, respecting international obligations and aligning with best practice. The consultation on our Human Rights Bill's proposals recently closed, and we were pleased to have significant engagement from organisations and rights holders across Scotland. We see the bill as not the be-all and end-all, but the next step in Scotland's human rights journey, building on the success of the Human Rights Act of 1998 and our ongoing effort to incorporate the UNCRC into Scots law. We of course hope at some point to be an independent nation and able to incorporate these and other rights more fully and clearly, but with this bill we intend to condition law, policy, budgets and service delivery to focus on those who are furthest away from having their rights realised. We'll be introducing for the first time in Scotland economic, social and cultural rights and specific rights for the protection of women, disabled people and those who experience racism. This means incorporating the following 4 UN treaties: the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination. We will also recognise the right to a healthy environment. We have designed a proposed model of incorporation to provide a clear, robust, accessible legal framework that ensures all rights holders in Scotland can understand and claim international human rights domestically, and that duty bearers in Scotland will better implement rights in practice. We will require devolved public bodies and private actors carrying out devolved public functions to comply with the economic, social, cultural and environmental rights in the bill that apply to everyone, in a way which ensures equality and non-discrimination for those who need it most, in particular those protected by the treaties for women, disabled people and those experiencing racism. Compliance duties will be based on both meeting minimum levels of rights and progressively realising rights over time. We want to establish the content of the minimum standards through a participatory process based on the fundamental principle of human dignity. We want duties on access to justice to have teeth. We want to improve non-court routes for issues to be resolved as quickly as possible in a way that people understand. We want to promote a multi-institutional approach to ensuring rights are upheld and ensure that members of the judiciary have the tools at their disposal to effectively adjudicate on these types of cases where necessary. And the bill will also be a key moment in our wider efforts to build a human rights culture. We want to ensure that rights holders are supported to name and claim their rights under our bill, and successful implementation will be vital to the whole endeavour, including the need to provide resources and guidance for public bodies, increased accountability and transparency for duty bearers, and information and awareness raising for everyone. We are alive to the need to get this right at the beginning, and we are already working with partners to do so. Of course, I would emphasise that these are proposals rather than a final bill policy. We continue to assess responses to our recent consultation, and we can't definitively say what the bill will do before Parliament has had a chance to scrutinise its provisions and propose and vote on amendments. However, I hope that this has helped to lay out our intentions and the direction that Scotland is heading on human rights journey. Our move could also have ripple effects for the rest of the UK, of course. I was recently asked in a media interview how the Scottish Government could do this. How could we introduce human rights for Scotland and not for everyone in the UK? What about the rest of the UK? What about the rest of the UK indeed? We would, as a country, love for human rights to be ensured and realised across the world, but we can only legislate for our own. And unfortunately, the UK Government does not think incorporation of international rights into domestic law is necessary. Our neighbours in the Welsh Government do think differently, and they have also committed to incorporating more international human rights treaties into Welsh law. I certainly hope that we can share our experience and support our friends in Wales to take the same or similar steps. On that note, I would also like to thank Scotland's civil society organisations, many of whom I know are in the room today, and the Scottish Human Rights Commission for their continued support and friendly challenge as we continue to develop the bill for introduction during the current parliamentary year. I know that we all want the same thing, and the challenge is how we get there, and to strike the balance exactly right between going as far as we can on human rights without stepping over the devolution line. So I'm sure, like me, you are looking forward to Kate Ewing's contribution next, and I look forward to your questions. So thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the event.